Good morning, and welcome to the Humboldt Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, an open-minded, open-hearted spiritual home to everyone who values acceptance for all people and care for all life on earth. I'm Debbie Cooper, one of your worship associates today, and we're very glad you're here virtually. We also humbly acknowledge that Huff stands on unceded ancestral lands of the Wiyot people, and we offer gratitude for their wise stewardship of this portion of Mother Earth. Each Sunday, we light a chalice, just the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. Our accompanying words today are by Katie Covey, the Soul Matters Director of RE Resources. Here's what I discovered. Intention is different from setting goals or resolutions in that it pulls us into who we truly are. Goals and resolutions push us out into future possibilities. To set intentions, we must listen to our inner voice, which tells us who we really are. I long to be pulled in more deeply to the self I already am. Maybe our real New Year's work is not about pushing forward into self-improvement, but about pausing, stepping back, and asking, what hunger has my heart? And I lost my message. There it is. Okay. One moment here. Every week, we also renew our commitment to this fellowship's foundational aspiration. Please join me in these words now. May love be the spirit of this fellowship. May its quest for truth be its sacrament, and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration. Now is the time set aside, especially for the youth in our congregation. And although we cannot be in person, I hope all young and young of heart come and join the story. There was once a wise owl who had 3 seeds. He gave the seeds to 3 little bunnies. If you plant the seeds and wait for them to grow, you'll have something nice to eat. The 3 bunnies all giggled. They took 1 seed each and ran into the fields. The first bunny thought to himself, I don't want to wait. I'll eat that seed now. So he ate the seed. It was hard and dry and horrible. I don't like this owl seed, he said. The second bunny made a hole in the ground and buried his seed. 1 week later, the first bunny came to see him. I ate the owl seed and it tasted horrible, he said. The second bunny laughed. You have to plant it and wait. The owl told us to wait. Look, I planted mine, and now it has 2 pretty green leaves. What happens next? Said the first bunny. Well, I don't know. And I don't want to wait any longer. Let's eat them now. So the 2 bunnies ate the leaves, 1 each. But soon they finished and they felt very disappointed. I think the owl was playing a trick on us, they said. The 2 bunnies were very cross. The owl had promised that they would have something nice to eat, but the seed tasted horrible and the leaves were only small. The owl must be wrong. A while later, the 2 bunnies visited their friends. They had forgotten all about the owl's seed. When they arrived at their friend's field, they were surprised to see a very strange plant. It was very tall. Dozens of green runner beans were hanging from its stem. Hello, said the third bunny. Try these beans. They are very nice to eat. And indeed, they were delicious. The two bunnies looked at each other and they said sadly, if only we had waited for our seeds to grow, then we would have something as nice as this too. And I don't know if Annette, I don't think Annette's going to play Go From Here in Peace. So we're going to go right into Joys and Sorrows. So just give me a moment to set this up. All right, so let's see what we have in the chat. Chip Sharp says, thank you to Sina Marino, Laurel Bussey, John Schaefer for helping to display the Black Lives Matter and Huff Climate Action banners yesterday from noon until 1:30 at 4th and V Streets in Eureka. From Debi, joy for my nephew Andrew, who has finished 6 rounds of chemo. Oh goodness, 6 rounds. I'm flying. See. Anyone else have any joys and sorrows they'd like to share? Let's see. Well, I'll share one. My mom came for Christmas and we all had a really good time. So that was good. And since I don't see any more in the chat, this last pebble, oh wait, hang on, hold that thought. From Aubrey, I'm asking for continued prayers for my sister who is receiving hospice care. Unfortunately, my mom and brother-in-law who have been caring for her are recovering from COVID. Prayers for them too. All right, well, here's for your sister, your mom, and your brother-in-law. Oh, and a happy birthday to Sue Mossman. Any other joys and sorrows? So for the last joy and sorrow, I'm going to drop this large moonstone because one of the aspects of moonstone is it enhances our intuition, which of course is the theme for today. So last pebble that we, for all the joys and sorrows that we hold in our hearts.
Thank you, Debbie. Debbie and I had hoped, obviously, to be in the sanctuary this morning with all of you, or at least many of you. And as you know, it's not something that we can do safely. So we're returning to a practice that we had, I'm sure you all recall, and we're hoping to engage you in this service, and we can be reminded of how we did this before. So I'm going to talk for I don't know, 8 or 9 minutes about this topic of the inner voice, and then I'm going to invite you to participate in a guided imagery activity, and then we're going to have some breakout rooms, so you'll have a chance to have conversations with other folks in smaller groups. And we picked that song. The notion of the light, the inner light, goes back through the 200 years or so of Unitarian life, Unitarian thought, really goes back to Emerson. And of course, he was influenced by his interaction with Quakers, or with friends, as Quakers tend to call themselves. And the notion of the inner light, in some ways, I think, connects with this notion of the inner voice, this notion of inner knowing, inner awareness. And I want to restate a little bit of Katie Covey's quote. And as some of you who are familiar with the Soul Matters material for January, you'll see that Debbie and I have drawn on this to a great extent. So Katie Covey wrote that quote, "To set intentions, we must listen to our inner voice which tells us who we truly are. And I want to share two other quotes to kind of set a tone for the rest of my talk. The first one comes from that great philosopher, Lily Tomlin. I always wanted to be somebody, but now I realize I should have been more specific. And the second one from Parker Palmer, who I imagine you're all quite familiar with. Before you tell your life what you intend to do with it, listen for what it intends to do with you. Before you tell your life what truths and values you have decided to live up to, let your life tell you what truths you embody, what values you represent. So when we talk about the will in Western psychology, we usually think of the will as an instrument of the mind. You know, it's something we think about. We decide in our consciousness. We have will power. And then we use our will to go out and act in the world. So in depth psychology and in Eastern spiritual traditions, there's a very different perception of the will. The will is its own energetic system. It's an expression not only of the mind, but of the body mind and of the soul or the spirit or the inner knowing or whatever term one uses to describe that quality of our human experience. Any of you who have engaged in martial arts, quote unquote martial arts, an interesting term in itself, know that the will in each martial art is actually identified as being in the belly center and certainly not in the mind. So if we think about this, either metaphorically or literally, depending on how you're comfortable with this, the will is an entity within us that our mind is not necessarily in charge of. So to illustrate this, I want to share an experience from my own life. In July of 2017, I was living in Bellingham, Washington. Many of you know this, and I was quite happy to be there. I'd been there 11 years, and Bellingham, if you haven't been there, is a wonderful little city, has a lot of cultural life and good politics. It even has a volcano and a bay and all these good things. And I was quite content to be there. And I actually expected to be there. I was actually just about to buy a burial plot in a natural burial ground that had just been created. I was thinking about, well, it seemed like a reasonable thing to do. I was, whatever it was, 68 at the time. And my inner voice, which has been a part of my life, really since I was in my late 20s, I was just sitting there one day, writing a letter to an old friend, and my inner voice popped up in my consciousness and said, well, guess what? You're going to move one more time. And because I've had experience with this a number of times in my life prior, I had this sense of the authenticity of this awareness. But even with that, even with my previous experience and my recognition that my inner voice had guided me in ways that had enriched my life and made my life meaningful on a number of occasions, my mind still resisted. I said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go somewhere else. I like it here. Plus, it's a lot of work. I'd have to sell my house. I'd have to move. I'd have to find somewhere to go. Where am I going to go? I don't know where to go. So anyway, it's a long story. I'll spare you the details. But eventually, one day, about 3 months later, after my mind had given in to the fact that this was going to happen. I was going to do this. I was sitting one day looking at a map of the United States, along the Western United States, west of the Great Plains, because, you know, I knew I was not going to move somewhere where you could look across the earth and it was flat. You know, this was not somewhere I planned to go. I like hills, I like mountains, I like, you know, differences in the Earth's surface and so on. And somehow what came into my awareness was Humboldt Bay, and not a picture of it, or not a map of it, or not an idea of it, but this kind of an aesthetic. And so I had been here once before in 1995. You know, I backpacked for a week on the Lost Coast. I did some hiking in the King Range. I didn't really pay that much attention to the towns, although I did, you know, spend a little time in Old Town and in Arcata. And I have to say, I was really amused by the statue of William McKinley in the Place of Pride in Arcata. And just as an aside, I grew up in Buffalo, New York for the first 13 years of my life. And President McKinley was assassinated in Buffalo in 1901. And what this reminded me of, when I was in junior high, we took some unauthorized field trips to try to locate the exact location of the assassination because they had hidden it so well. And I think we did find it. Now I think there's a marker there. But anyway, I really didn't have any particular association with Humboldt Bay. You know, I had a good backpack. It was lovely. Anyway, so I came down here. I said, well, I need to come down here and check this out before I actually make, you know, this commitment. And I came here in the summer, actually the fall. And, you know, I found enough that satisfied my mind. I mean, obviously there's a university, there's really interesting cultural life, there's great politics. I tried to move to California when I was 18 and failed, so this would succeed 50 years later. And so even more importantly, I found there was a great bagel bakery, you know, which is of course really important as well. And so this is how I got here. My inner voice came to me and said, you know, this is a place to go. And here I am 3.5 years later. And, you know, I feel like it was a good decision. I'm happy to be here. You know, I look at those of you on the screen today, and some of you may recall, I actually did a service in May of 2019. And, you know, Brian held my hand, and I was very nervous because I looked out at people in the room. I really didn't know anybody. I know a few of you. And now I look at the screen and I know everybody one way or another. And actually, I just met Blake last week. So the inner voice, to set our intentions, the inner voice. And in sharing this with you, I also want to say that I don't believe I'm anyone special or unique. This is just a quality of human capacity, I would argue, that is available to all of us. And it's been described in many, many different traditions and spiritual and religious orientations. And so to say a little bit more about it, I want to quote James Hillman. So James Hillman, I think he died a couple of years ago, but was for about 50 years the most noted Jungian psychologist in the United States. And in the late 90s, he published a book called The Soul's Code: In Search of Character and Calling, which strangely enough became something of a bestseller, given the fact that you know, nothing he ever wrote other than that really found a wide audience because it was too technical. So Hillman said, and I'm going to quote here, this is the quote, well, it's more of a myth than a theory. So the it he's talking about is this quality of the inner voice. It's more of a myth than a theory. And in this context, what he means by the word myth is not something that's false. He means it's a truth that transcends common sense. It's more of a myth than a theory. It's Plato's myth that you come into the world with a destiny, although he uses the word paradigma or paradigm instead of destiny. This is an image of potential that exists. It's described in the Kabbalah. The Mormons have it. The West Africans have it. The Hindus and Buddhists have it in different ways. Native Americans have it very strongly. So all these cultures all over the world have the same basic understanding of human existence. Only American psychology doesn't have it, end quote. So one more quote, Michael Meade, who actually was a student of Hillman's and then became his colleague. And Michael Meade is a mythologist and a cultural critic and a depth psychologist. And if you're not familiar with him, Michael's written several books. And he has a lot of YouTube talks as well. So Michael uses the word genius to describe this quality of inner voice, inner knowing. And he has a long argument about why he uses this word. So you'd have to, I'm not going to try to give the paraphrasing, just so you know that's what he's talking about. He says, each person enters the world with unique gifts and a life purpose waiting to be discovered. And this is each person's genius. So some of you know that I've written a book called Evolutionary Parenting and published this about 5-6 years ago. And what I did in that book was to actually take the same concepts and interviewed parents who had brought this perception of human nature and human potential to their parenting. So if you're interested in that, I'd be happy to share the book with you at no charge. I like giving it away, or I give you a PDF version. So what I'd like to do at this point is invite you to participate in a guided imagery activity. So the nature of guided imagery is that you are in charge of your own experience, and whatever engagement with the guided imagery you'd like to have is really up to you. I hope you'll participate, but if you don't feel that comfortable or don't want to, of course, that's up to you as well. So to get started, I'd like you to find a comfortable position where, if possible, your feet are on the floor flat and your back is straight, if that's possible. If it's not possible, that's fine too, of course. And if you want to lie down, you can do that as well. I can't promise I'll wake you up at the end though. So I'm going to give you just a few seconds now just to find a comfortable position, and maybe, let me see here, if I can see more people. There we go. Thank you. And if you're comfortable, for most people, guided imagery works better if you close your eyes. So I would encourage you to do that. You're all at home, so you're safe. Nobody's going to bother you since your eyes are closed. So I'd invite you just to relax, just to let yourself feel comfortable where you are. And feel yourself relaxing. Now you're staying alert, you're not falling asleep, but you're feeling yourself relax. So I'd invite you to become aware of your breath. And let yourself breathe in slowly and breathe out slowly. And breathe in slowly. And breathe out slowly. And now let your breath return to whatever your natural rhythm, but just still being aware of it. So I invite you now to scan your body. And I'm not going to take the time to lead you through all of the different body parts to release tension because that would take too long. But I'd invite you to do that yourself, beginning with your feet and your ankles, to scan your body. And if you find tension, to tighten that part of your body. Tighten 1, 2, 3, 4, and then release. And tighten 1, 2, 3, 4, and release. And we often hold tension in our bellies, in our jaws, in our shoulders. In your mind's eye, I invite you now to see yourself in a room in your house that has a closet. And see yourself sitting in that room. You're comfortable. It's a nice temperature in that room. It's not too cold. It's not too hot. You're very aware of what a pleasant place this room is for you right now. And you become aware of the closet. And you realize that inside that closet, your inner voice is waiting and has something to tell you. So I'd like you to go over to that closet and open the door. And I'm going to give you some time now to find out what it is that your inner voice wants to tell you this morning. So I invite you now to come back out of the closet and come back into your room. And when you're ready to open your eyes, come back and join us.
There is always a light when we are ready to see it. There is always a light when we are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There is always a light in the dark. We are ready to see it. There is always a light in the dark. We are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night and be a gift. Together we will. There is always a light. There is always a light. We are ready to see it. There is always a light. There is always in the dark. We are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night and be a gift. Together we will. There is always light. There is always dark. There is always light. There is always dark. To see the light, to be the light, to shine in the dark of night and be a climb this hill. Together we will. There is always shine. There is always in the dark. There is always shine. There is always shine. Be the light.
Could line up right and blah, 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 that I never even said it. So sorry about that. I also just wanted to take a moment to just show some gratitude for Lea Morris, who's putting her voice out into the universe for us to enjoy and use in services like this. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the offertory. So I just want to see if Annette's there and ready to, yep, okay. So we come to this fellowship today in spirit because we love what exists here. It's a living entity, and like all living things, it needs nurture and sustenance. Its breath and heartbeat, life itself, is only derived from its living components, us. We are so glad to have you here today. Please take note of the slide that provides options on how to contribute to the fellowship's financial health. Braces. We are grateful for the gifts offered today and for all the gifts and blessings in our lives.
So I have one more quote to share with you from the Soul Matters materials, which this month, as every month, are really very, very well done. And this is from someone named Philip Moffat. I should look him up, but haven't done that yet. And I quote, "With goals, the future is always the focus. Are you going to reach the goal? Will you be happy when you do? Setting intention, at least according to Buddhist teachings, is quite different than goal making. It is not oriented toward a future outcome. Instead, it is a path or practice that is focused on how you are being in the present moment. Goals help you make your place in the world and be an effective person. But being grounded in intention is what provides integrity and unity in your life."
Okay, and we're actually a little early today, but we're going to close this service and extinguish the chalice. And the words for the extinguished chalice is going to be reading 434 in our Singing the Living Tradition hymnal. Sacred Spirit of our radically interconnected existence and our deeply entwined lives, help us to remember our highest aspirations. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but related in mystery and miracle to the universe, to the communion of all life, and to each other. In kindling our Unitarian Universalist chalice flame, we invoke and invite into this space the divine light of wisdom, the sacred fire of justice and compassion, and dedicate ourselves anew to bringing our fullest gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. Blessed be. So unfortunately, we ended up a little early today. My apologies for that, but please stick around for coffee hour, and who knows what else might happen, what our inner self, higher self, inner mind might have to say.